They thought she was just a grease-stained mechanic, forgotten at the edge of an air base, until a desperate radio cry shattered the silence. "We need you!" In that instant, 12 years of secrets ripped open, and the woman everyone ignored reached for the helmet that once made generals tremble. Who was she really? And why did the enemy ace call her by name? Stay with me, because before this story ends, you'll see why her legend was buried and why the world wasn't ready when she rose again. Subscribe to A Simple Woman right now, ring the bell, and let's step into the sky together. The night at Clearwater Ridge was heavy with the kind of silence that only comes before disaster. Inside the command center, a wall of glowing monitors painted the room in shifting blues and reds. Colonel Mason Ridge leaned forward over the console, his jaw set tight as the radar told a story he didn't want to hear. Blue dots, their Bravo squadron, were shrinking one by one under the swarm of red markers. His voice was low but firm, commanding calm even as the storm closed in. "Status update. Where's Alpha Squadron?" The reply from Lieutenant Sloane Park came clipped, her fingers flying across the keyboard. 2 hours out, Colonel. They won't make it in time." On the speakers above them, static screeched, followed by a raw, panicked cry that tore through the room. "We lost Lieutenant Foster. Hostiles everywhere. God, we're outnumbered. We need support now." Then the voice that froze every soul in the room. Major Tessa Ward, the unshakable leader of Bravo, was shouting into the void. "We're being torn apart out here. We need you." The words echoed through the base like a ghost from another lifetime. In the hangar far from the command room, a woman stopped in her tracks. Elara Quinn, grease on her hands and coveralls stained from hours bent over engines, felt her breath catch in her throat. She knew that cry. Not just the sound of Ward's desperation, but the exact phrase, "We need you." She had heard it before, 12 years ago, on the night everything unraveled. On the night she lost her entire squadron in Operation Nightfall. Her hands trembled as she set down the wrench she was holding, the clatter, ringing louder than the alarms beginning to wail across the base. Around her, young mechanics scrambled, eyes wide with fear, but Elara's gaze drifted upward. Beyond the rafters of the hangar, toward the sky she had sworn never to touch again. She walked quickly, almost blindly, past the rows of aircraft. F-22 Raptors gleamed under the harsh white lights, their sharp angles like predators waiting to be unleashed. She brushed her gloved fingers along the cold fuselage of one jet, her touch lingering on the rivets and seams. To the others, she was just a mechanic who knew machines too well, but the way her fingertips traced the metal told another truth. This wasn't steel to her, this was memory, muscle, a living extension of who she once was. Behind her, a familiar voice called out, half mocking. "Careful with that bird, Quinn. You don't want to scratch something worth more than your yearly pay." Lieutenant Morris, one of the cocky pilots, grinned at the laughter from his peers. "Leave the flying to those of us who earned it." Elara didn't respond. She had learned to absorb the barbs, to let the disguise hold. But from across the hangar, Chief Warrant Officer Elias Dane watched. Decades of service had sharpened his instincts, and he saw what the others could not. The way Elara's posture shifted when she touched the controls, the precision in her movements, it wasn't a mechanic's curiosity. It was a pilot's muscle memory. The alarms blared louder. A red light pulsed across the hangar, signaling code red. Soldiers ran to their stations, pilots sprinted for gear, and mechanics scattered. Elara's heart hammered in her chest as another scream crackled over the radio. "They're dropping fast. We need backup now. We need you." The second time shattered her restraint. Her legs moved before her mind could catch up. She tore down the corridor, boots pounding against the concrete, breath ragged, up 2 flights of stairs, through the narrow passageway to her quarters. Inside, the room was as Spartan as she was, bare walls, a metal bed, and in the corner, an old trunk. She had told herself she'd never touch it again, but her hands disobeyed, fumbling with the lock, throwing it open with a clatter. That seemed to reverberate off every memory she had tried to bury. Inside lay relics of another life, a flight suit folded neatly, though the fabric was faded and the patches worn. On top, a helmet, its paint scratched and peeling, but the emblem still visible, a kestrel, wings spread wide, eyes sharp and unyielding. Ghost Kestrel, the call sign that had once made enemies curse her name and allies cheer. Elara stared at it, her breath shallow. She remembered the last time she wore it, the last time she heard her squadron's voices go silent one by one. She had buried it all, told herself the sky was no longer hers. Her fingers brushed the insignia, and the words slipped from her lips like a vow. Not again. One piece at a time, she donned the suit. The zipper's rasp was the sound of a coffin opening. Each strap buckled into place was a chain snapping loose. When she slid the helmet over her head, the world narrowed into focus. The mechanic was gone. Ghost Kestrel had returned. She stormed down the corridor, each step faster, harder, her presence shifting the air around her. A young sergeant, Price, tried to block her path. "Hey, you can't be here," he barked, eyes darting to the helmet, the suit. Something in her stare froze him mid-sentence. She didn't shout, she didn't argue. She simply said, "Move." And he did, instinct overriding protocol. At the hangar doors, Lieutenant Park gawked, her face draining of color. "Colonel, you need to see this," she whispered into her comms. In the command room, Mason Ridge turned, expecting another disaster. Instead, he saw the feed from the hangar, a figure striding toward an F-22, helmet marked with a ghostly kestrel. His breath caught. He had read the files, attended the memorial, knew the legend was dead. And yet here she was. "Is that?" someone asked. Ridge didn't answer. He just stared, as if daring the image to vanish. Then Elias Dane's gravelly voice cut through the silence. "She doesn't fly the jet, she becomes it." The F-22's engines roared to life, the thunder shaking the hangar. Mechanics and soldiers froze, wide-eyed, as the Raptor rolled onto the runway. Through the radio, a calm voice broke the stunned silence. "Ghost Kestrel, airborne." The command center fell silent. Colonel Ridge exhaled slowly, his decision made. He leaned toward the mic, his words measured. "Then God help the ones who stand in her way." The moment the F-22's afterburners howled down the runway, disbelief rippled through Clearwater Ridge. In the command center, voices erupted all at once. Lieutenant Sloane Park slammed her headset onto the console, eyes blazing. "Colonel, this is insane. She's not on the roster. She's not cleared to fly. She's a mechanic, for God's sake." The room buzzed with fear and outrage, but Mason Ridge didn't move. His eyes stayed on the radar, watching the lone green dot climb into the sky with impossible grace. On the flight line, officers raced out of the hangar, trying to flag her down as if one woman could be stopped by raised arms. The jet was already airborne, climbing into the clouds, leaving behind stunned silence and a trail of disbelief. Elara Quinn had crossed the line, and the entire chain of command was scrambling to decide whether she was a savior or a liability. Back in the hangar, Major Tessa Ward stormed in, her helmet still in hand from scrambling to get to the runway. She was furious, sweat dripping down her brow, her voice cutting like a blade. "Who authorized this?" she demanded. Her gaze darted from the stunned Sergeant Price to Park's furious expression on the monitor, then landed on Colonel Ridge as he entered. "You can't just let a civilian hijack a fighter. Do you realize the risk?" Ridge faced her evenly, his voice low but firm. "That wasn't a hijack, Major. That was a return." Ward blinked, the words sinking in. She opened her mouth, but before she could retort, Elias Dane stepped forward from the shadows of the hangar, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. His voice was rough, gravel ground against steel. "You all talk about regulations and rosters," he said, staring each of them down, "but none of you saw what I saw." She put that helmet on, and the air changed. She's not guessing. She's not stealing. She's taking back what was always hers. Park's voice cut in through the comms, biting and sharp. "With respect, Chief, this isn't about air changing, it's about protocol. We don't know who she is, what she's doing, or why she's even here. She could get everyone killed." The old warrant officer snorted. "You really don't know who she is, do you?" He glanced at Ridge, who said nothing, just held the younger officer's stares. Dane dropped the rag and jabbed a finger toward the sky. "That's Ghost Kestrel. You've read the reports," whispered the legends. "She was the Phantom of Nightfall, the one enemy pilots cursed in their sleep. She's the reason half of you are still walking on free ground. And she's the reason the other half think a mechanic's touch saved your jets all this time. She isn't just another pilot. She's the pilot." A silence fell over the group, disbelief warring with dawning recognition. Park shook her head, clinging to logic. "Even if that's true, she's been out for 12 years. People don't just step back into the cockpit after burying themselves for over a decade. Her instincts are rusty, her judgment compromised. And we have lives depending on her not screwing this up." Ward, though still visibly tense, hesitated now. Her own voice was quieter, touched with something other than anger. "If she really is Ghost Kestrel, then maybe we've all been blind." Ridge finally spoke, his tone leaving no room for argument. "We don't have the luxury of debating ghosts. Bravo is dying up there. Reinforcements won't arrive in time. Either she fights or Bravo falls." His words were heavy, not with recklessness but with the cold calculus of a commander who knew the balance sheet of war. The comms crackled suddenly. A calm, razor-sharp voice filled the room. "Command, this is Ghost Kestrel. I have visual on Bravo squadron. 3 Raptors still airborne, 5 bandits pressing, preparing to engage." The room froze. The voice was steady, controlled, not a mechanic fumbling with stolen controls, but a predator who had lived behind the HUD her entire life. Park swallowed hard, her objections crumbling under the undeniable authority in that tone. Ward's lips parted slightly, awe flickering in her eyes. Dane allowed himself the faintest of smiles, vindicated. Ridge leaned into the mic, his decision clear. "Ghost Kestrel, this is command. You are cleared to engage. Bring them home." The acknowledgement came without hesitation. "Copy that, command. No one falls tonight." As the radar lit up with the maneuvers of a jet moving faster and sharper than the others, the argument ended. Regulations had been broken, yes. Protocol shredded, but something greater than law had returned to the sky. The others stared at the monitors, watching a green dot weave impossible arcs among the red, and realized the truth. They weren't watching a mechanic play at being a pilot. They were watching the rebirth of a legend. The sky above Clearwater Ridge burned with chaos. Flares streaked like dying stars. Tracer rounds carved violent constellations. Across the black canvas, and Bravo Squadron fought just to stay alive. 3 Raptors darted and twisted, their pilots exhausted and cornered, fuel dwindling, while 5 enemy MiGs pressed with ruthless precision. The radio was a storm of clipped voices, panic barely hidden beneath strained control. "I can't shake him. Fox 3! No lock, no lock. Major Ward, I'm hit but still airborne." Into that storm cut a voice none of them expected. Calm, almost icy. "Bravo, this is Ghost Kestrel. Hold your line. I've got your 6. The moment her call sign hit the channel, the chatter froze. Ward herself nearly choked on the reply. "Ghost? That's impossible. You..." But then a green flash streaked down from the clouds, afterburners igniting. Like twin suns, and an F-22 dove through the chaos with impossible speed. Elara Quinn's jet slid in behind one of the MiGs just as it banked hard left to finish a wounded Bravo pilot. Her hands moved faster than thought, throttle slammed, crosshairs steady. She fired. The missile screamed across the night and tore the MiG apart in a blossom of fire that lit the valley floor. Cheers erupted over the radio, disbelief mixing with relief. "Kestrel, is that really you?" Ward demanded, her breathing ragged. "Alive and airborne," Elara answered flatly. "Pull your squadron to Charlie 7 coordinates. Defensive altitude, I'll take the offensive. Ward hesitated. There are still 4 of them. That's suicide. Elara's tone didn't waver. 12 years ago, I hesitated, and my squad died. I won't make that mistake again. Move. Her raptor vanished into a bank of low clouds before Ward could argue further. On the radar in the command center, technicians gasped as one green dot blinked in and out, slipping between enemy locks as though it ignored the laws of physics. Mason Ridge leaned closer to the screen, whispering to himself, "She's not flying the plane. She is the plane." Out of the mist, Elara struck again. She cut across the belly of 2 MiGs locked onto a Bravo tail, her jet rolling into an impossible corkscrew. The first missile connected before the enemy pilot even realized she was there. The second MiG broke hard, desperate, but Elara rode his escape vector, tightened her spiral, and shredded him with cannon fire. 2 kills in 15 seconds. Jesus Christ, one of the young Bravo pilots muttered over comms. "What even are you?" Elara didn't answer. She was already gone, slipping back into cover, her mind in the zone she thought she'd lost forever. Every shift of wind, every flicker of heat on her HUD sang to her like an old song. For the first time in 12 years, she wasn't drowning in guilt. She was flying. The 3 surviving Bravo pilots regrouped, breathing space finally theirs. "Command, we're stable," Ward reported, her voice still shaking. "Whoever she is, she just saved us." But the reprieve didn't last. A new blip lit up the radar, faster, more deliberate than the rest. The voice that followed was smooth, heavy with a foreign accent and dripping with cruel satisfaction. "So, the Ghost returns." Every channel went silent. The enemy ace hadn't identified himself, but they all knew. Sergei Drakov, call sign Iron Fang, the pilot whispered about in every debrief, the hunter who had crushed squads and left only wreckage in his wake. Elara's breath caught, just for a fraction of a second. The voice was unmistakable. It dragged her back to that night, to Operation Nightfall, to the moment her wingman's scream cut out and her world fell apart. She gripped the stick tighter, steadying the tremor in her hands. "I knew you weren't dead," Iron Fang said calmly, as if speaking to an old acquaintance. 12 years I waited for this moment. Tonight, Ghost Kestrel, the sky is mine." The radio filled with stunned silence, every Bravo pilot realizing what they had stumbled into. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was a duel written long before they ever took flight. The sky seemed to narrow around her as Iron Fang's MiG slashed across. The darkness, its silhouette cutting like a blade against the stars. His voice returned over the open channel, taunting, calm, deliberate. "Come, Ghost Kestrel. Leave the flock to me. Show me if you still have claws." Elara's jaw tightened. She forced herself to breathe evenly, eyes scanning the HUD, the shifting dance of friend and foe. He was already playing the game, pulling her focus away from Bravo, daring her to chase him into the kill box he had built. She recognized the pattern. He had done it before. 12 years ago, her squad had been scattered into his trap because she had left them exposed. "Bravo, maintain Charlie 7, she ordered sharply. "Do not break formation. Repeat, do not break." But not everyone could resist the lure. Lieutenant Kai Rourke, young and impulsive, peeled away. His voice crackled with adrenaline. "I've got a shot. He's mine. No!" Elara snapped, but it was too late. Iron Fang baited him perfectly, diving low, then pulling up in a vicious climb. Kai followed, his raptor roaring after him. And in an instant he was, hanging in the worst possible place, locked in Iron Fang's crosshairs. Alarm screamed in Kai's cockpit. "He's got me!" "Can't shake him." His voice spiked with panic. Elara's heart jolted. She had been here before. Another young voice, another desperate cry. Her squad from Nightfall, gone because she hadn't been there in time. The memory ripped through her chest like shrapnel. Not again. She shoved her throttle forward, forcing her jet into a brutal climb. The G-force crushing her ribs, her vision tunneling at the edges. Iron Fang was locked on Kai's tail, missile-armed, waiting for the perfect second. If she broke toward him, she could cut the angle, maybe take the shot. But it meant exposing herself to his wingman lurking at altitude. For a split second, the cold strategist in her whispered, "Ignore the boy, go for the hunter, cut the head off the snake." But her body already knew the choice. She couldn't let another young pilot die while she chased vengeance. "Hang on, kid," she hissed, banking hard. Her raptor screamed into position, closing on Kai's tail just as Iron Fang's missile lock blared. Elara loosed a counter-missile, the white trail carving through the dark, intercepting in a blinding flash. The explosion rocked Kai's jet but spared him. "Break left now," she barked, and Kai obeyed instinctively, diving out of the trap. Iron Fang's laughter slithered through the comms, smooth and cruel. "You never change. Always the protector, always bleeding for children who should not be in the sky." Elara steadied her breath, but her hands shook on the stick. He was inside her head, pressing on the wounds that never closed. She leveled her voice. Better to bleed protecting them than to be remembered for slaughtering them. Iron Fang rolled inverted, slipping away into the cover of high clouds, his wingman shadowing him. The message was clear. He had tested her, and he knew her weakness. She had chosen the boy, not the kill, and now he had time to set the next snare. In Bravo's comms, voices collided. Panic, relief, gratitude. "He almost had me," Kai muttered, shaken, his pride stripped raw. Ward's tone cut sharp. "You disobeyed formation. You nearly got yourself killed." Elara cut in, voice like steel. "No more mistakes. He wants us scattered. Stay tight or we all die." Silence followed. Even Ward had nothing to add. The authority in Elara's words carried more than command. It carried survival. High above, Iron Fang vanished into the clouds, his radar signature flickering like a phantom. But his parting words lingered, chilling every ear. "Next time, Ghost Kestrel, you will choose wrong, and when you do, I will be there to finish what I began." Elara exhaled slowly, her mind calculating. She had saved Kai, but the cost was clear. Iron Fang had seen through her. He had found the crack in her armor, and he was already pulling the sky tighter, weaving the kind of cage that only ended one way, with one of them falling in flames. The sky seemed calm for a fleeting moment, but Elara Quinn knew better. Calm was the oldest trick in the book, the breath before the blade. Her HUD flickered with static as jammers clawed at the radar, masking enemy positions. She steadied her breathing, letting instinct take over where electronics failed. The clouds above were too still, the silence too heavy. Iron Fang was still out there. Bravo's squadron held formation below her, shaken but alive. Major Ward's voice was tight. "Command, we've stabilized. Requesting orders." Mason Ridge's reply was steady, but Elara heard the strain. "Hold position. Ghost Kestrel, eyes up. We can't afford another surprise." Elara angled her jet higher, skimming the ceiling of the valley. Every sense screamed of danger, then a flicker, barely a trace on her sensors, gone as quickly as it appeared. She snapped her raptor into a roll, searching. Nothing, just a whisper of a shadow in the moonlight, and then it hit her. She remembered this feeling. Nightfall. 12 years ago, her squadron had been torn apart not by numbers but by precision. Invisible enemies striking from nowhere, pushing her pilots one by one into impossible situations until the only voice left on the comms was her own. Back then, intelligence said it was a formation of aces, but her gut knew it was more than that. The maneuvers, the traps, the voice that taunted her as she bled through the sky. She had buried it, forced herself to forget. But now, hearing his laugh, seeing his dance in the shadows, the truth sharpened like a blade pressed to her throat. Iron Fang hadn't just been another hunter. He was the hand that ended Nightfall. He was the ghost she'd been chasing in her nightmares for 12 years. Her breath hitched, the weight of realization crashing down. She tightened her grip on the stick until her knuckles ached. "It was you," she whispered into the sealed canopy, voice raw with memory. You slaughtered them. As if summoned, his voice returned, smooth and cutting. At last you remember. Your friends screamed so sweetly, and you hesitated. That is why you lived. The word stabbed deeper than any missile. She forced herself to swallow the fury, to turn it into steel. And tonight, she hissed, is why you die. But he had already set the cage. A pair of enemy fighters cut across her path, herded her toward the valley floor. Missiles locked, alarms blared, and she banked hard, weaving through canyons that threatened to tear her apart with one wrong move. Bravo tried to break formation to help, but she snapped an order sharp enough to slice through their panic. Stay put! He wants you scattered. He wants another nightfall, not this time. Her jet shuddered as she pulled through a narrow gorge, countermeasures firing in brilliant flares behind her. For a second, the Mijis vanished. Then Iron Fang's voice slipped back, closer now, like a predator at her shoulder. Run, little ghost, run as you did before. The rage steadied her. Her heart slowed, her mind sharpened. She saw the terrain not as danger but as opportunity. The jagged walls, the shifting air currents, most pilots feared them. She had trained with them, lived in them. And hidden deep in her muscle memory was a maneuver no manual had ever recorded. One she had abandoned after nightfall because no one believed it could be flown twice. The Spectre spiral, a corkscrewing ascent, twisting the jet into an impossible axis, bleeding speed to lure the pursuer, then cutting gravity into a vertical dive that reversed hunter and prey. A move so violent it threatened to tear the jet apart, or the pilot. The kind of maneuver you only attempted when you were ready to trade your wings for victory. Elara steadied her breath. The time for hesitation had ended long ago. She pulled back on the stick, throttle wide, climbing toward the thin air above the canyon. Her Raptor groaned under the strain, the frame shuddering as if protesting. Sweat stung her eyes, but she held steady, her voice calm as she spoke into the comms. Command, Bravo, maintain altitude. Do not interfere. This ends tonight. From the corner of her eye, the enemy's shadow climbed after her, hungry and confident. She let them close. She needed them close. Her pulse slowed, each beat in rhythm with the machine. For 12 years she had buried Ghost Kestrel. Now, in the stillness before the storm, she felt her wings unfold again. The sky thinned into black glass as Elara's Raptor clawed upward, every rivet and panel screaming under the strain. The altimeter spun, the air density dropping, and still she pulled, her jaw clenched against the weight of G-forces crushing her chest. Behind her, Iron Fang followed with predatory precision, his Miji locked in pursuit, certain he had her cornered. His voice hissed over the radio. You can climb, Ghost, but you cannot escape gravity. That was exactly what she was counting on. At the apex, when her jet threatened to stall, Elara twisted the stick into a brutal roll, cutting throttle and kicking rudder in a move no manual dared to describe. The Raptor bucked like a wild animal, its nose lurching sideways, wings groaning under impossible torque. For a heartbeat, the world spun out of control. Black bled at the edges of her vision. Even her seasoned body begged her to stop. But she held, forcing the jet into the spiral she had invented. A maneuver, born of desperation 12 years ago and nearly lost with her squad. The Spectre spiral. The corkscrew ascent twisted into a violent flip. Speed bled off in a controlled fall, the jet spinning nose over tail before snapping into a vertical dive. From the ground, it would look like the Raptor had been struck, tumbling into a death spiral, and Iron Fang, hungry for blood, dove straight into the trap. His laughter filled her headset. Too easy. He locked his missile, his Miji lining up on what he thought was a crippled foe. But in that instant, Elara snapped the Raptor's nose through the spiral, riding gravity like a blade, and the world inverted. She was no longer the hunted, she was on his tail. Her HUD screamed as the lock-on tone filled her helmet. The tables had turned in a heartbeat. In the command center, stunned technicians stared at the radar feed. The dots had twisted positions so fast that the computers struggled to register what had happened. Colonel Ridge leaned closer, disbelief in his eyes. She pulled the impossible. Elia Stain just smiled grimly, whispering, "Spectre spiral." I knew she still had it. Elara's breathing steadied, every ounce of fury tempered into cold calculation. She had Iron Fang dead to rights, a squeeze of the trigger, and the man who haunted her nights would burn into wreckage. Her finger hovered, her muscles taut, but she didn't fire, not yet. Mercy was part of the doctrine she carried, the discipline she had reclaimed, and Iron Fang had to see it. "Still think I'm running?" she said quietly over the comms. For the first time, silence answered her, then a low growl. "Clever, but one trick won't save you forever." He broke hard, jettisoning flares, pulling into the clouds with a desperation he had never shown before. She followed, but not too close, careful to keep her advantage. She didn't need to chase recklessly. She had proven the truth. The ghost had claws sharper than ever. Below, Bravo Squadron's cheers filled the channel. She flipped him, unbelievable. Even Major Ward's voice carried awe. "Command, I don't know what I just saw, but Ghost Kestrel is rewriting the sky." But Elara wasn't celebrating. She knew Iron Fang too well. He wouldn't retreat for long. This wasn't finished. This was the prelude. She leveled her jet, steadying her breath, every nerve alive. The spiral had bought her dominance, but it had also cost her. The frame was hot, the controls sluggish from the punishment, and she could feel fatigue gnawing at her body. One more mistake, and the legend would end in fire. Over the comms, Iron Fang's voice returned, harsher, tinged with something unfamiliar, respect or perhaps rage. "Very well, Ghost. You want the hunt? Then I give you the hunt." The Miji's signature reappeared on her sensors, flanking wide, circling for a final confrontation. He wasn't fleeing, he was setting the stage. And deep down, Elara welcomed it. She had carried the weight of Nightfall too long. The only way forward was through him. She rolled her shoulders, flexed her grip, and whispered into the canopy, not for him, not for command, but for the voices she had lost 12 years ago. "This time, I finish it." The sky was no longer a battlefield. It was a coliseum, and the world itself held its breath as two predators circled. High above Clearwater Ridge, Elara Quinn leveled her Raptor against the horizon, HUD glowing in sharp green lines. Across the black expanse, the MiG-35 of Sergei Drakov, Iron Fang, cut its own arc through the clouds, sleek and menacing. For 12 years, she had dreamed of this duel, half in fear, half in longing. Now it was here. The radios were silent, save for the hiss of static. Even Bravo Squadron, still circling defensively at a lower altitude, held their tongues. They knew they were intruding on something older, heavier than any of them. It wasn't just a fight between jets. It was history demanding an answer. Elara steadied her breath, letting it fill the rhythm of the machine around her. Every vibration of the engine, every tremor of the wings, all of it pulsed like a second heartbeat. She whispered to herself, "Not again, not this time." Iron Fang's voice cut across the comms, rich with arrogance. 12 years, Ghost Kestrel. 12 years since you left your comrades to die. Tonight you join them. Her lips tightened. "Funny," she said coolly. "I was about to say the same to you." He moved first, the MiG Dove, afterburners blazing, angling for a head-on pass. Elara throttled up to meet him, altitude collapsing between them. The two jets streaked toward each other like arrows fired from opposite ends of destiny. At the last second she twisted, rolling inverted as his missiles streaked past, the heat searing across her canopy. She felt the shockwave rattle her teeth, but she was alive. She yanked into a hard climb, Iron Fang pivoting beneath her, the hunter refusing to lose sight. His cannon roared, rounds chewing the space she had just vacated. The dogfight turned into a deadly spiral, the two jets dancing in a storm. of fire and steel, each searching for the fatal mistake that never came. In the command center, Colonel Ridge gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Technicians whispered prayers as the radar painted their impossible maneuvers, green and red locked in a lethal embrace. Elias Dane muttered under his breath, eyes unblinking. She's pushing him, she's rewriting the sky. But Iron Fang was relentless. He forced her down toward the canyon, where sharp cliffs and treacherous winds made survival unlikely. Elara recognized the trap, Nightfall's cage, reborn. She had lost everything in terrain like this once. He wanted her ghosts to bury her again. As her jet skimmed the ridgeline, her comms erupted with Ward's voice. "Kestrel, break off! He's forcing you into the same kill zone." "No," Elara snapped, her eyes cold. "This time I'm ready." She pulled her raptor into a climb that nearly snapped the frame, her body screaming against the gravity. Iron Fang clung to her tail, missiles armed. In her ear, a younger voice cracked with fear. Kai Rourke, disobeying orders again, dove to intercept. "I can cover you." Elara's blood chilled. "Negative. Stay clear. That's an order." But Kai didn't listen. His raptor streaked across the canyon, trying to flank Iron Fang. For a brief moment, pride and terror collided in Elara's chest. His flying was raw, reckless, but there was something familiar in his angle, his instinctive maneuver. It was the same way her old wingman had flown, all those years ago. The same man who had died in her arms. The realization hit her like a missile. Kai wasn't just another rookie. He was her wingman's son. Her breath caught, the weight of 12 years pressing down at once. The face she had tried to forget, the voice she had buried, all of it alive again in the young pilot throwing himself into danger. He didn't even know the truth. He didn't know that the woman he was trying to save had once failed his father. Iron Fang saw the boy's move and pounced. He shifted off Elara's tail, locking onto Kai with predatory glee. So eager, this one. He sneered over comms. "Perhaps I'll let you watch him burn." Elara's world narrowed to a single decision. Pursue Iron Fang and leave Kai to fend for himself, or throw herself into the path and risk the same failure that had haunted her for years. Her hands shook, her vision blurred, but her voice rang clear, a vow to ghosts and blood alike. Not this time. She rolled her raptor into the gap, cutting across Iron Fang's firing line just as his missiles streaked free. She loosed countermeasures. The explosion rocking her jet so violently alarms screamed across the cockpit. Pain lanced through her body as the G-force slammed her down, but Kai was alive. His voice trembled in her headset. "He almost had me. Why would you risk?" She wanted to tell him everything, about his father, about her failure, about why she could never let him die under her watch. But there was no time. Iron Fang was circling back, enraged at the spoiled kill. Elara forced her jet higher, lungs burning, every nerve raw. She had one chance left, one maneuver that might end it all. The Spectre spiral had saved her once, but to use it again, here, against Iron Fang himself, it would either make her a legend reborn or kill her outright. She whispered into the radio, her voice a blade. "Bravo, hold formation. Kai, stay back. This ends with me." And then she dove. The spiral ignited, her jet twisting into the impossible corkscrew, gravity. Tearing at the frame, the sky bending into a blur of stars and steel. Iron Fang followed, too arrogant to see the snare until it was too late. Elara reversed, rolling into position behind him, her HUD screaming with lock tone. Her finger hovered on the trigger. 12 years of pain, of nightmares, of voices begging her to come back, all coalesced into this moment. One squeeze and Iron Fang would vanish in fire. One squeeze and Nightfall's ghost would be buried. But then she remembered Dane's words, the creed she had come to believe, accuracy, discipline, mercy. She fired, not to kill, but to clip. Her missile shredded Iron Fang's stabilizer, sending his Mi-G spiraling, crippled but not destroyed. The man who had haunted her would live but broken, defeated, and forced to crawl back with the shame of survival. her comms filled with Bravo's cheers, voices bursting with awe. "She's got him! Unbelievable!" Ward's voice shook with relief. "Command!" Ghost Kestrel neutralized the ace, all hostiles retreating. But Kai's voice was quiet, trembling with confusion. "You saved me." "Why?" Elara's throat tightened. She couldn't give him the truth. Not yet. "Because someone saved me once," she said softly. "And I won't let that sacrifice be wasted." The battlefield fell silent, save for the hiss of her engines. Elara exhaled, a breath 12 years in the making. Nightfall was no longer her cage. She had rewritten it into her redemption. The hangars of Clearwater Ridge buzzed with life again, but the air felt different. Soldiers and mechanics moved with the hushed reverence of people who had witnessed something impossible. Whispers of Ghost Kestrel rolled down every corridor, passed from mouth to mouth like scripture. Some swore they had seen her jet perform maneuvers beyond physics. Others said she was more phantom than pilot. But all agreed on one truth: she had saved them. In the command center, Colonel Ridge stood before Elara Quinn, his voice carrying the weight of ceremony. "Major Quinn," he said, using a rank the Air Force had long since struck from her record. "On behalf of this base and this country, I offer you full reinstatement. You belong in the sky." The room waited for her answer. Bravo pilots, bruised and shaken, stood straighter in her presence. Major Ward met her eyes with respect instead of suspicion. Even Lieutenant Park, once her fiercest critic, held her breath. Elara's gaze drifted toward the F-22 parked on the tarmac, still, warm from battle, its paint scarred, its wings glinting under floodlights. For a heartbeat, she imagined climbing into the cockpit again, feeling the roar of engines beneath her, disappearing into the clouds. But then she saw Kai Rourke standing among the squadron, his young face pale but unbroken. She remembered another face, another pilot, lost 12 years ago, and the promise she had made to herself never to repeat that failure. "Thank you, Colonel," she said quietly, her voice steady. "But my place isn't in the sky anymore." A ripple of shock swept the room. Ridge frowned. "You're refusing?" Elara nodded. "I came back to stop a ghost. Now that it's done, the sky belongs to them." She turned toward the young pilots, Ward, Park, Kai, and her voice softened, carrying more weight than any medal. "My duty now is here, on the ground. To teach, to protect, to make sure none of you ever carry the scars I do." She opened her palm, revealing a patch she had stitched herself. The Kestrel insignia, simple, sharp, wings outstretched. "This is not about me, it's about what we stand for. Accuracy, discipline, mercy. That's the Spectre doctrine, and it starts with you." Elias Dane's weathered eyes glistened as he nodded. About damn time the world learned that ghosts don't just haunt, they guide. In the weeks that followed, Clearwater Ridge transformed. Pilots painted small Kestrel silhouettes on their helmets, not as decoration but as quiet vows. In the hangars, Elara walked among them, showing them tricks no manual taught: how to feel the turbulence in their bones, how to use terrain as ally, how to trust instinct without surrendering to recklessness. Kai Rourke followed her like a shadow, hungry to learn, though he still didn't know the truth about his father. Someday, she promised herself, she would tell him. For now, it was enough that he flew with the fire of legacy and the shield of her protection. One evening, as the sun bled over the runway, Elara paused at the edge of the tarmac. She watched a flight of raptors roar into the sky, their silhouettes framed in gold. She didn't envy them. She didn't regret her choice. She felt something she hadn't in 12 years: peace. Ghost Kestrel would never vanish from legend, but Elara Quinn no longer needed the sky to prove who she was. Her wings had already taken root in every pilot she touched, every life she saved. And at Clearwater Ridge, when the wind whispered between the hangars at night, some swore they could still hear the echo of phantom engines, because some wings, once spread, never fold again. And so, the woman who once hid in silence for 12 long years proved that some wings never truly fold. Elara Quinn did not return to the sky for medals or rank. She returned to protect, to teach, and to pass on the discipline that turned her scars into strength. Ghost Kestrel became more than a call sign. She became a doctrine, a legacy, etched into every young pilot who would one day carry her lessons into the clouds. Thank you for staying with us through this journey of redemption and courage. If Elara's story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to A Simple Woman's Stories and ring the bell so you never miss the next chapter. I'd love to hear from you. What part of her journey struck you the most, and what would you have done in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and when you're ready for more, stay with us, because the next stories are waiting. Choose one of the videos on screen now and continue exploring the hidden legacies of women the world almost forgot.